Okay, so this is the add operation. We have a lot going on here, and let me just run the program, and we'll get started talking about some of the program behavior. I mean, obviously the ultimate goal is to enter a brand new record and have it committed to the database, but we have to kind of coordinate that with the user interface as well. So basically, I click my Add New button, and look at what happens. The text fields are cleared out so that we can obviously start typing in a brand new record. If we don't like this -1, the cake ID, now that's an auto number behind the scenes. Like in the database, it's an auto number. So Access is handling the numbering system. So the first cake in the red velvet is 1, and then I think there's cake number 9 is the latest cake, which is the toffee cake. And so basically, the auto numbers are generated by the database. Here's the thing is, though, we're not tapped into the database at this moment. So your program doesn't know what the next number is necessarily. The program is just going kind of off the data set. So we have a remedy for that. I'll show you that first. It's a very quick fix. If you don't like that -1 there, and it's not the end of the world. I'll show you a more sophisticated way of fixing this later, like in a few weeks. But for now, I have an easy fix for that, if you're interested. It's not the kind of thing I care too much about at the moment, but later, like I said, I'll show you something, a better way. But if I'm in the dataset schema. Recall that the dataset schema can be accessed through the XSD file in the Solution Explorer. So it's cake ID we're talking about. So I could click on cake ID, and if we go to the properties here, see how it's auto increment seed and auto increment step. If you just change these both from -1s to +1s, that's going to fix that issue. So now, when we run the program, you'll see, I believe that, like I said, the last cake in the data set as it stands right now is number 9. And when I hit Add New, it's going to increment it to number 10. I mean, nothing is happening in the database yet. We're still just in the data set, in the binding source, but eventually this will be synced with the database. Okay, so now the Add New, what is happening here? So when I click the Add New, a lot going on. First of all, this was the Boolean variable that we had up at the top to keep track of whether or not we're adding a new record or updating an existing record. So we are going to set that to true when we start to add the new record. Another variable or reference I've created up at the top is, this is called a type data set. When you use your data set, the data set is called Cake's data set. And if you type in a dot there, we have some interesting choices here. And the cake row is just, it's just like the name implies. It's like one row that would be appropriate for that data set. One cake with a cake ID, a cake name, a price, and that type of thing. So we're creating just a single cake row, and we're calling it new cake. All right. So what's happening in the Add New Cake button, which is different from the Save button. The Save button figures in too, but later. Let me get back here. Okay, so adding new, we're in true. Okay. And then we're setting the new cake reference to a brand new row. Now we're actually adding a row, a cake row. And then we're going to attach that row to the data set. And I have a visual here in a Word document. So you can imagine your data set looks like this, a data set with all the cakes in it. And then I created that new cake row. It's like an empty cake row with, 5 columns that would line up with the data set. So in step 1 here, we're creating the new disembodied cake row. He's like floating out here all by himself in memory, okay? In step 2, I turn around and add that new row to the data set. Cake's dataset.cake table, add cake row, and we're adding that new cake row. So if you can want to visualize it, this is what's happening in step 2, is that new row kind of gets attached to the data set. And so now you have 10 rows, in this case 10 rows in our data set, and the last one is blank. Now interestingly, the third step is to use the binding source and do a move last. What's going to happen when we move last and land on this blank row? What's going to happen to our bound controls? They are going to clear out. okay, which is exactly what we want in this case, but because we want to clear out the text boxes so that the user can start typing in the new cake values. So I do add new here, and this is what happened. So that all that just happened, the new cake row, it was attached to the data set, and then that move last lands on this blank row, which is the last row in the data set, and it clears out the text boxes so the user can start typing the new cake. So the user is going to type in a new cake here and then hit the save button. Let's look at the save button. Okay, so if adding new, which we are in this case, so now we're in the top here, we have, it's kind of similar to the what we did for the update in the last video, but looking at, again, collecting those values from the text boxes, whatever the user enters. And it's worth noting that like the price and the order time, those are numeric values, but all you have to do is grab the text out of there and put it into the data set, and it's like, it's interesting how it just kind of all works out, and you don't have to worry about parsing or converting or casting. You don't have to, you can just treat it as text and put it into your database, and all that, Access will take care of the data types as the data is coming in. So you really don't have to worry about data types much at all when you're working with some of these ADO.NET components. So anyway, we're taking those values, putting it into the new cake row, the empty cake row, and once I've grabbed all those values, I can say adding new equals false, like we're done with the important stuff for the add new. And then what happens, it goes here. I talked about this code in the last video in the update. This is shared by the update and the add operation, so you're just getting out of edit mode, you're syncing the changes in the data set with the underlying database, and then you're disabling the save and the cancel buttons. So one thing I'm not doing in this video, I'll do that, this would warrant its own video. I'm going to do the add picture thing here, adding a new picture. That's kind of a long process in and of itself, so I don't want to do it here. But I'll just, I'm going to go ahead and run this. I'm going to add a new record without a picture. We'll do that later, and then we'll make sure that the record went into the database. Okay, so I'm going to add a new cake, and I'm going to make this a Hello Kitty cake. And we'll say it costs $20, and it takes 5 days, skipping the picture for now, and then we'll do a save. Okay, no news is good news. Let's check the working database behind the scenes. Okay, and there it is, without the picture name, which is coming in the next video.